Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of Bluegrass Jam Along. My guest on the podcast this week is Shelby Means, who I'm sure lots and lots of you know as the bass player with Molly Tuttle's band Golden Highway until very recently. But she also has out a fantastic solo record, and it's her first solo record. It's just called Shelby Means, and we had a really cool chat about it. It was, I say a cool chat, it was a hot day. It was something like 90 degrees here in London, and I was sat in a little room with no aircon and no fan. Very warm. Shelby was in a van on the side of the highway, parked up next to McDonald's to get Wi-Fi signal to do the call in very hot weather on our way to a gig, and so we had a hot conversation rather than a cool conversation, but it was really enjoyable. Loved chatting about the record, sort of the gestation of these songs over quite some time, the people she chose to play on it, where the inspiration for the songs came from. We also chat about playing with Molly, what she learned from that, and you know, the really cool journey she's been on with Molly over the past 4 years. Just a really fun chat. It's a great record. Do go and check it out. I'll put links to stuff in the show notes if you want to find out more about Shelby and the album. But yeah, here comes my interview with Shelby Means. So, Shelby Means, welcome to Bluegrass Jam Along. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Matt.
And first off, congratulations on a great record. Really enjoying it.
Thank you. I'm glad you're listening. It was really fun to make and feels so good that it's out in public now.
It's that funny thing, isn't it? As a kind of listener, stuff lands and we think that it's just been recorded and released, but actually it's been over a year for you generally as an artist, isn't it? And so to finally get something out must be really exciting.
Yes, definitely. I've been digging into all the details of these songs for it feels like a long time, just getting in like microscopic with them. So then just being able to listen to the record as a whole is really nice.
Yeah, because one of the senses that I get just listening through and reading some of the stuff that came with it is these songs have been written up quite a long time span, or some started quite a while ago and only finished recently. So you've been living with some of these for a long time.
Yes. Like, well, even performing Old House, I started performing that when I was a little kid and growing up with my dad's band. So that is nice because it felt like a comfortable, well, I don't know, like if you know this about me, but I love vintage clothes and there's something like worn in about them. So that song is like a vintage thing. It's like a vintage sweater for my voice because it feels like I've sung it so many times.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. It's a really cool way of thinking about it. And there are 11 originals or co-writes, and that's one of the covers. And obviously, the other cover is slightly further out of genre than that. Got Lady Gaga in there.
Definitely.
I love it when people bring things in from outside. There's a grand tradition of it in kind of bluegrass and string band music, and things like Rebecca Frazier's recent album had a version of Borderline by Madonna on it, and Del McCoury is great at bringing things in from really unexpected places.
By the way, I'm on that track on Rebecca Frazier's record.
It's a great version, isn't it?
Yeah, so good.
And of the songs that you wrote, what like a lot of them, were they started first and then sort of finished off with somebody else, or did they start as co-writes?
Well, a mixture. On High Plains, Wyoming, that started as a co-write, me and Kelsey Walden in the room together. And Suitcase Blues, I started writing literally as I was driving out of Nashville, crying. and then later brought in Joel and Maya. So it just depends.
And is that how they start for you, songs? Is it often like a melody or a lyric that comes to you while you're doing something else rather than sort of sitting down with an instrument, or is it a bit of a mix?
I think a little bit of both, but I do find if my body is in motion, if I'm riding a bike or driving or walking, it's easier to just something happens and I just let the ideas come, and I'm always humming a tune, and then sometimes it becomes a tune with words, or I don't know.
And so the kind of writer's got a kind of phone full of voice memos of bits of melodies and.
Yeah, because you want to capture that spark, that initial creative flow, and then maybe you'll sit down with a pen and guitar later, or an iPad or something, and work on that. But also with Brendan Lee, I wrote Five String Wake Up Call with her, and that was a super fun and unique co-write for me because I'd never even really met her, and my producer said, you should write with her for the record. So I had I just, in my Google Doc where I was organizing the songs, just put a few ideas of song ideas, like an idea or a title or a feeling, something. And that idea that my dad I feel like I needed to just just give him a little credit for getting me into this world of bluegrass. So I wanted to write a song about how he used to wake me up with a banjo. So that was just it, just my little notes. And then I had a few thoughts written down, like spitballing. So that one started with idea and lyrics, and then we got on Zoom and in 1 hour finished the song.
I love that song. I love the idea that your dad woke you up in the morning with a banjo and yet you still like bluegrass, because it could have gone the other way, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And as a dad of a 12-year-old kid, I know how hard it can be to get kids out of bed in the morning. So I might start playing some banjo to him and see how quickly he gets up.
Well, it's a pretty good tactic. It's hard to ignore.
Also, I play the banjo really badly, so there's two levels of getting him up there. There's the banjo and then there's me.
The more I hear, the more people hear that song, and the session musicians that were on that one, they all had their own stories of how they used to torture their kids kind of with their instruments, like with the sound.
I had heard a great story. I don't know if kind of which one it was. One of the great orchestral conductors would lie in bed for hours and hours, and his wife would get up and just play a descending C major scale, but stop on D, because she knew it would drive him mad. In order to get the resolution at the end, he would have to get up and play a C major chord, and then he was up.
That's amazing. So funny.
And at what point for you, like, with all these sort of songs started, at what point did you think this was going to be an album? At what point did that idea come together?
Well, so we went into the studio March 2024. Sorry, 2020. Yes, 4. I must have said I was going to make a record and booked the studio in the fall of 2023. And that's when it gets real for me, because without that deadline of, we're going into the studio on this date, these are the musicians, then it's just all in your head until then. So, but in December, I remember my husband was finishing up his solo record, and Maya produced that as well. She came to Charleston, where we live, and finished up his record, and then did a little bit of pre-production with me, gathering. And that's when I was going through my notebooks and starting to count up the songs that I had and see if where they would fit.
It's always a really interesting. I always love asking people what kind of role the producers played on their record, because there's so many different ways of producing a record, and it sounds like that Maya was involved kind of pretty early on.
Yes, I that was one of my perks with Maya. I know she's an amazing songwriter, and so I figured could use that as a producer, helping just choose songs, find songs that fit together, and as a sounding board, like, is this song finished? Or does it need an edit? Like, help me just like make the song the best it can be. So that was a beautiful thing to experience with Maya.
Well, I heard you talk somewhere else, must have been in another interview, about recording Sally and George record just with the two of you and no producer. And it's a totally different thing, isn't it, when you're kind of having to judge your own creation as you're creating it. It's lots of people do it and do it really well, but it's a strange place to be in, isn't it?
It is. And I think that also made me an interesting person to produce for Maya, possibly because having produced myself before, I was pretty invested in what I was hearing in my head, and especially like in my vocals. I wanted to be around for the comping and choosing words and all of that that might be happening. So it was really sweet to be able to work with Maya and do those things and know that if I got too tired, or usually we would agree, but if one of us was feeling fatigue and couldn't make the decision, usually the other person could jump in and say, this is what I feel strongly. And it's a gut decision.
And it's a really sort of vocal first record, isn't it? They're songs, and there's some incredible playing and an incredible bunch of people, and it's beautifully recorded, but it's very much kind of the singing is front and center. And I love that, not just because you sound great on it, but there's also such a lovely mix of harmonies on there from different people too. And I love it's one of the things I love about the liner notes. You go, no, it's Tim O'Brien, which as soon as you hear it, of course it's Tim O'Brien, but Billy Strings is on there, Molly and Kyle are on there, Rachel Bayman's on there, and all these I love that.
Yeah, that was so much fun. And it kind of goes back to how I like to host jam sessions when I was first in Nashville and gather people around and have pickin' parties, because that's what it felt like with the vocal sessions. Just who would I call to come over to my pickin' party? Of course, Tim O'Brien, Rachel, and Kelsey, and all the gang. Yeah, Ronnie McCurry and Sam Grisman.
I mean, it's a great lineup. And I remember talking to Bronwyn about her first record, and she was saying the same about like James Key sings on that, and she was saying, I'm just thinking, who are the people that I enjoy playing with, and
Yeah.
And
it's nice to have a sort of mix of peers and I would say just mentors and like musicians that I really respect on the record, because I've made a record with Della before, which was like a pure record, and that was really, really cool. And then with City of Gold, we were a band, so we had Jerry and Molly producing, but still we had this chemistry. And with Bronwyn, I knew I had chemistry, but a lot of the pickers on the session, Bryan, I knew from before, but it was the first time that I played with Ron Block and Michael Cleveland, so it was just totally amazing. Really nerve-wracking at times, but because I just wanted to be good enough. But they put me at ease. They did, so it was really special.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about kind of deciding to record and booking the studio and booking the musicians. And when you look at that, the kind of the sort of incentive, not pressure, but the incentive to have yourself ready and your stuff ready. When you look down that list and go, these people are coming to play my songs. I mean, that's
yeah,
glorious.
I need to know them.
Because Bryan produced one of the Della records, didn't he?
Yeah, he produced This World Oft Can Be. That's the one that I played on. That was really great to work with him as in the producer role. I learned a lot doing that record, just communication and how to listen in the studio, and always check that you're in tune when you start out. Just little things like that you might sometimes forget.
We'll be right back with you just after this. The long-awaited Hill Country series from Collins Guitars represents a new voice in their acoustic lineup. Rooted deep in the bluegrass world, these new Dreadnought and OM models feature a strong fundamental tone with a dry, warm and woody character that's sure to catch the attention of players who hold the vintage instruments of the 30s in their highest regard. Watch world-class pickers Jake Workman, Kenny Smith and Bob Minner perform with new hill country instruments on the Collins Guitars YouTube channel, and learn more at collinsguitars.com. Yeah, it's so easy to get, there's so many moving parts we're in the studio about getting the notes right, being in tune, kind of, listening to other people, playing it with some emotion. There's so many places you can drop one of those balls and not notice that you've done it. And that's the other joy of having a producer, I guess. And we've said Maya, or we haven't actually said it's Maya Davitri in case people listening aren't aware. That's who, and she's somebody who's become more and more on my radar over the last couple of years. I think I first heard her name. She wrote a song on Caitlin Canty's record, Quiet Flame.
Yeah.
That's where I first heard her name. But just the more time goes on, the more she crops up and the more I see she's doing. It sounds like she's got an arc of a journey going on for herself now.
It's wonderful to see. We're in the van heading out west and have a week of shows and then a little bit more with as trio with me, Maya Davitri and Joel Timmons, who plays with her a lot. They did a tour in the UK, I think, last year. So I'm looking forward to the live shows because Joel and Maya are also on my record and singing harmony. And so I know that the 3-part harmonies are just going to be so sweet on this upcoming tour.
Well, it must be interesting because having been in two bands Della May were a hard-working band. They toured a lot that time. Around the time you were in them, you were doing a lot of shows.
Yes.
And then touring with Molly and playing kind of some huge shows and some, as that. It felt like watching from the sidelines that band was together for years, but can only have been 3 or 4 years in the end. But just the build over that time was astonishing.
Right. Yeah, I think we started 2021 or maybe 2022. I don't know, fall. It was 3.5 years about with Golden Highway, and the growth was it was amazing to experience, going from a Sprinter van tour with one crew member to a bus tour with a trailer and 5 crew members, and just watching it grow.
Yeah, and
winning the Grammys and
that second one must have felt great because Crooked Tree wasn't a band album in the same sense as City of Gold, was it? Like you all sort of came together to tour for that record, but so to get the Grammy for the second record must have been like a real nice moment for you as a group.
It's on my it's on my mantle at home.
And it's funny because I think I've interviewed all of that band at some point. I've interviewed Bronwyn about her records. I spoke to Kyle about his solo record. Dominic Leslie came on when I did a 20th anniversary thing for Mike Marshall and Chris Thiele's Into the Cauldron record. And just the sense I get from all of you was what a fun band that was to be in.
Well, it was cool for us to be a part of something that was growing so fast. And I was always amazed at the talent that I got to support, hearing the solos, especially in the beginning when the songs were fresh and we were all excited and just learning what everyone else was going to play. And that was exciting. That's really fun. That's why it was but also I guess everyone had history together at Berkeley a little bit. And Kyle and I had known each other from the days when I was in Della May, and Dom and I grew up in Colorado together. So there was, he Colorado, me Wyoming, and we would do a lot of similar festivals. So it was sweet to come together with some old friends in the scene and work together.
Well, and in terms of you kind of launching a solo career, the timing's kind of perfect in a way. Presumably you didn't know that at the time you recorded this record and sort of planned to put it out around now?
Right. No, I did not know. what was the future of Molly Tuttle. But I'm just really grateful that I got into the studio when I did, that I was able to save money thanks to touring with Molly, and also just network with Jerry, and feel like my playing and my singing was all in a good place where I should capture this moment in my career, and that was cool. Yeah, I felt empowered.
When you were saying about kind of, you know, listening to the rest of the band take breaks on those songs at the beginning, and I remember Bronwyn said, because I interviewed her twice. I interviewed once about Fiddler's Pastime, and then kind of when the second record came out, and she said that you and Molly were a big part of giving her the confidence to want to do a vocal record and sing all the songs herself. She said just being on a stage night after night with two such strong female bluegrass voices was the thing that made her think, maybe I can do this, you know.
Yeah. I think everyone can sing, especially like if you can already play the fiddle at that extremely high level like Bronwyn, you know that your ear works, and your ear and your voice are so close together, like just a little bit of trying, that's all it took. And Bronwyn's doing amazing stuff with her career.
And
she was always encouraging me to take solos on the bass, which was out of my comfort zone. So that's also, I just love that everyone was able to inspire each other to get better and to grow.
Yeah, and one of the things I really enjoyed about when I get a record through to listen to, I'm going to interview somebody, the thing I always hope is that there'll either be a little bit of written material that comes with it, or like a track by track something that just gives me a little window into what the songs mean, because that's the stuff that I love talking about. And I really enjoyed the notes for this one, because there's just so many points to sort of dive in. I love the idea of Up on the Mountain, which started like, you know, years ago as a song, and kind of finally, but something really poignant you were talking about, it was finally finished when you went to record the record in March 24. And then obviously after that, the hurricane hit in North Carolina, and the song has taken on a new meaning. And that's extraordinary sort of decade and a half journey for a song to go on. And it sort of harks back to what you were saying before about they're like old garments almost. You live with them, you know?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. That's one of my favorites on the record. Of course, Tim O'Brien does an amazing job singing on that one. And Up on the Mountain, I feel like the fans might end up retitling that song. I couldn't figure out what to call it. That was one of my hard things. I have this pet peeve. I don't like to call a song the first line of the song for some reason, even though that makes a lot of sense. So, but in my head, it's always the first line, because A Boy Plays is what I called the song we were going into the studio. But I don't know. Feels like the mountain or something. Up on the Mountain is what I ended up with. But even that, it's like trying on different outfits. It's the same song no matter what I call it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I can totally see why people call a song after the first line or the most prominent line in the chorus or whatever. And the temptation as a songwriter is to not do that, because it sort of pins it down a bit too much. But then at the same time, there's nothing worse than, as a fan, knowing you know a song but not being able to remember what the title is because the title doesn't appear in the lyrics anywhere.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, people that collect set lists from the shows, often I'll have a lot of shorthand for the titles of the songs. So I'm like, what are they going to think when they see like the initials or whatever it is?
And Suitcase Blues feels like a sort of central track on this record as well. It feels very much like a kind of like it tells a story about your time in Nashville, I guess. You must have been, you were there, was it a decade you were there for?
Yep, about 11 years.
And I love that.
Well, I was touring really hard during a lot of that time, so I don't know how to count it. It feels like it was technically 11 years, but I was hardly ever there in Nashville. But I was there enough to have some deep roots, and so that it hurt when I ended up moving out of the city. That's kind of...
Well, I love what you wrote about it, says you've driven out of Nashville like hundreds of times as a musician, like knowing you're coming back again, but leaving for obviously not the last time, but leaving to be somewhere else, as a... Mm-hmm. I love the idea that the song sort of started writing itself at that point. It's kind of tied to the moment you're writing about.
Exactly, yeah. And it's those powerful emotions for me are usually, I can't plan them. And that's why it's so nice to have the voice memo app and just be able to just channel this emotion into a song, or, try and do something productive with what I'm feeling.
And you sort of talk about the Nashville community there, which is also kind of reflected in the last song on the record, Joy. And it's sort of reflected in the personnel on the record as well. It's it feels very much like there's a Nashville community vibe going on there as well.
Yeah. I did have I guess the first verse was kind of referencing protesting in Nashville with people during the pandemic. The song was written during the pandemic, and so I was remembering that feeling of, even though we were coming together in the streets for something that we felt needed improvement, there was a sense of joy in the community. And that's also a big part of bluegrass and why I love bluegrass. And I even think the bluegrass community in my liner notes, just my community, I couldn't do it without the pickers and the cookers and the grinners, just everybody coming together.
I think that's one of the loveliest things, because I don't come from the bluegrass community, but I have now, through this podcast, spent some time on the fringes of it. But it's just it's that joyous thing of how little divide there is between the people who go to the jam sessions, go to the festivals, go to the gigs, and the people who stand on the stage. And it's such everybody's sort of on the same continuum somewhere. It's not these chunks of individual audience, band, industry. Everybody's sort of part of all of that.
Yeah, that is cool. Really cool.
And I think it also sort of speaks a little bit. You were talking before about picking some of these musicians, and a lot of genres of music feel the constant need to replace what came before to kind of be the new generation and the new thing. And there's sort of none of that. It's all kind of building on something, it seems to be, to me.
Yeah, I like it was important to include sort of a tie to Bill Monroe for me. And so that was Old House. Old House was written by George Jones and recorded by Bill Monroe, or performed by Bill. So the father of bluegrass himself is playing that song. So that's like my nod to tradition. There are some serious traditionalists in bluegrass, and I think if I got with the right community around me, I could have a traditional bluegrass band. But I also I was super influenced by Alison Krauss and Union Station and Blue Highway and Nickel Creek and the more modern bluegrass, the Evolution, Newgrass Revival. They were before those bands. So it's cool to see that bluegrass can evolve. I like that, but I also like having, respect for tradition.
Yeah, and there's a really sort of rich seam of that around at the moment. Like Alison's back with Union Station, and that's a big thing. But the things that Billy and Molly are doing, and there's a very visible, kind of very commercially successful angle to that is also so clearly rooted in tradition, and keen to point out that it's rooted in tradition,
Yeah. Thanks to Billy, a lot of young folks are learning about the traditional bluegrass songs. Slewfoot, Uncle Pen, and that's pretty cool because that's going to keep the jam going.
Yeah, and was that so? Your dad woke you up as a kid by playing you the banjo. Were you sort of playing from a pretty young age yourself?
Yes, I was. I was 5 when I first took up the fiddle, and I tried that for a year and decided it was not the right one for me. And then in 5th grade, I tried viola in the orchestra, and I also joined choir. And then after a year of viola, I wanted to move on. So my dad said, you should pick up the guitar and learn some chords on that. So he taught me D, A, and G probably first off. And that's all you need. C, then you got some good bluegrass going on, and F's really easy after that. So I could then start participating in jam sessions easier. And then when I was 13, I think I saw a woman playing the bass, Erin Youngberg, and she inspired me. After that point, I couldn't think about playing any other instrument. I had to play the bass. So when I was 14, I started.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There are some kind of really prominent female bass players around, but I guess that must have been a fairly unusual thing for you to remember it as that at that point.
Yeah, and thinking about it, I don't remember seeing any men play the bass, even though I'm sure I did. I just really noticed Erin and was like, oh, that's so cool. When I first moved to Nashville, I got to meet Bryn Davies and hang out with her. I don't know if you know, she played with Tony Rice, and that's where I saw her playing with Tony Rice in Nashville. And she was a big mentor to me also. Just total badass. I'm like, well, I want to be like her.
And is there kind of recording a record and kind of fronting a band as a bass player? It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's an element of you might feel like you need to somehow feature the bass more or take bass solos or kind of. But there's lots of ways of doing that.
Yeah,
it's an interesting mix, isn't it?
I think the bass is its own feature. I don't think I feel like that too much because I know I don't want to force the bass into a role that it doesn't want to be in. But I have gotten more brave and I take a few more solos than I did maybe 5 years ago. So that's just fun though. People like it, and it's an opportunity for everybody to get quiet on stage and then build something up with the bass. So that's pretty sweet. Although, the bass being in the center is kind of like a feature too. It's just so large. It's like, obviously it's a featured instrument.
Yeah, and it looks, judging from the stuff that came around with the record, you've got quite a lot of tour dates coming up. You're going to go out and play quite a bit for this record.
Yes, I'm really excited about that. My time freed up with Golden Highway going away, so I found a booking agent and decided to hit the road. And I'm going to be performing with a trio, quartet, 5-piece band. Sometimes in my dream occasions, I performed with an 8-piece band at the 5 spot for my album release show. I had all 3 fiddlers that played on the record at that show. It was amazing. And now I'm just really spoiled. I want that all the time, but only on special occasions, I think.
I mean, any occasion to have those 3 play fiddle at the same time is a good one, right?
For sure.
And there's one song I really wanted to ask you about on this record, which is Elephant at the Zoo, which is like the rest of the songs are to one degree or another relatively straightforward in terms of like getting a sense of what the theme of the song is, kind of what and that is not. Like it's fascinating. I love it because it comes just before the end, so it kind of takes you to a totally different place, and then Joy sort of brings you back to somewhere closer to where you left. So the placement of it is brilliant, but it's a fascinating song. It's quite unlike the rest of them, isn't it?
I think so. It was also one that I started probably around the same time when I wrote Fisherman's Daughter, and my friend in Wyoming, who was my mentor for singing, and his name's Bill McKay, I was talking to him about songwriting because I respected his songwriting and I just wanted to learn more. And he was telling me, like, I think you're onto something, but what's deeper? Can you go deeper? And that was when the verses were being written. I see you, this I know, like thinking about myself, trying to go deeper. And then I like slipped through some portal that took me to the elephant at the zoo part. Like in trying to find the deepness, it just went somewhere that was an imagination land, but like imagining how elephants paint and they have good memories. And so what if we're just a memory in the elephant's mind that it's trying to get out on the paint board? I don't know. It's, yeah, someone called it maybe my weirdest song, and I think that's true, but it's really fun.
Well, so far, who knows? Who knows where the next record goes?
Exactly. It's a challenge a little bit.
And what, because you've already had kind of long and rich career in the string band world, and I was wondering how it feels to make kind of a solo record at this point, and what things you've learned along the way that, if you'd made this record 15 years ago, what you've learned as a musician through all of that sort of applies to this.
Yeah. Oh, so much that I've learned. And a lot of intention. Like, I think I wanted something specific with this record, and the timing worked out. I don't know why I didn't ever make a solo record before. It just wasn't on my agenda, honestly. I enjoyed being a bass player, and that's how I got my gigs. And songwriting, I'm a creative person, and I just like didn't have I wasn't songwriting specifically to make an album and then try and become a star in Nashville. I think now I've definitely, all those experiences that I've had out on the road have really enriched my creativity in songwriting, and so informed that a lot. I think the songs are better than they would have been if I just released them 10 years ago. And I think my voice is better. My voice teacher always told me that a woman's voice doesn't mature until we're in our 30s. And so I don't know. I didn't want to make it too soon. I wanted it to be good.
Well, and it feels like as we were talking about, some of these songs, you've lived with them for a while, and that's presumably kind of enriched them as songs. And do you have another bunch? Do you have like a kind of collection of songs that have been started? And sometimes somebody's first record is, these are the songs I have, and sometimes it's just, these are some of the songs I have, and I have lots more songs.
Yeah, I do have more notebooks and more songs and more starts, but I will be writing more, like specifically for the next record. I think it's always a mix. Looking back, what have I? Oh yeah, that was a good idea. I should finish that.
Well, has it given you the appetite to co-write more? Have you enjoyed that process?
I love co-writing. Yeah, and I think it's also introduced me. In a way, it's a really nice tool, this record, because it's introducing me to the bluegrass world as a songwriter now instead of a bass player. People maybe didn't realize that I wrote songs, and so I'm excited. Like, I met Tim Stafford recently and thought, oh yeah, we should do a co-write. Just, it's getting me excited to, now that I feel like people know, oh, she's a songwriter, then I think I'll be able to schedule more co-writes too.
Yeah, well, best of luck with all the tour dates, and congratulations on the record. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's fantastic, and
thank you.
Excited to see what comes next.
Yes, and I hope to make it to the UK, maybe 2026, hopefully 2027. I don't know, but I love touring internationally, so hopefully London.
Well, you did quite a lot of that with Della, didn't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You
absolutely
hit more countries than the average bluegrass band.
I guess so, unless they do State Department tours. That took care of 6 countries for me, so it's pretty awesome.
Well, fingers crossed I get to see you over here at some point. Fingers crossed also I make it out to Chattanooga for IBMA in September.
Yes.
Are you playing? I saw somewhere that you were playing at IBMA.
I am. I'm going to do a set on the international stage, actually. I can't remember what time that is, but it'll be up there on the internet.
Excellent. Well, hopefully I'll make it out and I'll come and see you. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I've really enjoyed chatting to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Same. Have a good rest of your day.
Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.